Now, since the last video, I have had a bit of a conundrum, and I don't know how to explain it in simple terms. Last time I described how our journey of discovery is like assembling a jigsaw puzzle, how we need to first identify the individual pieces of relevant information, and then know how to assemble them using the different combinations, turning each piece to identify the connection. But what happens when you come to an impasse? When there seems to be pieces missing, or you just can't seem to find the right piece? Right now, there are so many fragments of information on the table, I wouldn't know if any are missing at this stage. But that would be normal, wouldn't it? Sure, I feel like I'm getting closer to seeing the big picture. But it's also such a slow process. And right now, the end seems as far away as ever, with new information constantly presenting itself. Now I've come to a fork in the road, and I really need to take both paths. But which one first? Now we have moved on from the biblical history of Yahweh as we have been taught to believe, as opposed to the truth of who he really was, to the idea that this reality might be a simulation. But now that we are here, there are two main aspects to the subject I want to consider before moving on. Two major ideas that have presented themselves, and each seems to threaten the validity of the other. The one is simulation theory itself, or a certain aspect of it, I should say. And the other regarding this reason, or the reason I started this enigmatic journey in the first place, remote viewing. Especially regarding Earth being a prison planet, and how that premise, if true, might fit into the simulation hypothesis. Now, in and of themselves, there is no real conflict between these main theories as I see them, that is, remote viewing and simulation theory. But that's not the case regarding certain factions of each hypothesis. Both of these sub-branches in their particular disciplines, remote viewing and Archaix, and we will look at that a little later, have proved themselves to one extent or another as being quite credible. However, each one of these particular sub-theories, if I can call them that, if true, seems to cancel out the other's proposition, at least to my thinking. Or perhaps I'm wrong, and there is a middle ground, or another piece to this puzzle I need to find. Now hopefully this will become clearer as we proceed, when I explain what each group is arguing for. Also, this could just be the fact that no one person or one group has all the truth, as I illustrated the last time. Okay, so before this gets too convoluted, let's navigate this maze I seem to be subconsciously constructing through my mental decrepitude. I'm the grumpy grandpa. Now I apologize if I'm confusing you, because if you can't tell, I'm a little confused myself, or at least I was. So let's go back to the beginning of this journey and remind ourselves what remote viewing is, and what the director of the Farsight Institute, Courtney Brown, claims regarding this planet. Now the clip is about 7 minutes long, but we really need to have this reminder before we continue with this subject. Now what you're about to see is a trailer from the documentary Third Eye Spies. This is very revealing. I've provided a link below to the full video, which can be watched free on YouTube.
If you had an ability to be able to remotely perceive stuff any place in the world, that could be an extraordinary intelligence source.
We found that many individuals are able to accurately describe what's going on in distant locations.
Are you saying that the work you've been doing is classified?
It was a research facility. That was all that we were going to tell them.
The Russians have been spending millions of dollars in investigating so-called ESP.
Psychic spies.
Almost a psychic arms race here. Is there any real application to this?
I think remote viewing has been demonstrated over the 20 years of work that's been sponsored by the government.
Producing crucial and vital intelligence to the NSA, CIA, DEA, and the Secret Service.
I began to feel frightened.
The KGB did it next. What's really going on here?
State-sponsored assassination attempt.
The CIA was lying.
They wanted to kill the program.
A storm brewing.
This is real. I say no more secrets.
Let this information out.
Now, coming to the point of all this, there is a remote viewing institution called the Farsight Institute, and they have many videos on their website, farsightprime.com, with remote viewing projects of various subjects. One of those projects is called the Death Traps, and this has serious relevance to what we are discussing. It talks of our being trapped after death, having our memory wiped, and being forced to reincarnate back on Earth. Images of our loved ones and soul guides, along with a life review, are presented to us as part of the deception. Now, I'm going to let the director of Farsight, Dr. Courtney Brown, explain in his own words what the death traps are all about.
What I am about to tell you and show you is probably the most astounding thing that you may have ever been told in your entire life.
Now, this guy is serious about what he is about to reveal to us. I have followed Courtney Brown for some time, and I'm convinced that under his directorship, Farsight is onto something big.
Initially, I expect that very few will believe it or even try to consider it. It will sound too outlandish or over the top for most people. But whatever you do with this information, whether you believe it or not, at least for myself, know that after looking at the accumulation of data collected at Farsight over a great many years, I am certain it is true.
Now, this does rely on a lot of trust on our part. We cannot prove one way or another if this information is correct or not. But at least some credibility has to be given to an institute with Farsight's track record.
Earth has long been a planet that has been operated as a prison, and I mean this literally, not as a metaphor for something else.
I'm someone who pays a close attention to body language, and I pride myself in my ability to read people. And I don't say that lightly. I don't have many outstanding abilities. I'm not a gifted person. I'm a bit of a dullard, if anything. But I can read body language, and this guy gets my attention.
People who live here were mostly dumped here from somewhere else, from other planets on other star systems within our own galaxy, and possibly some star systems in other nearby galaxies.
Do you feel you've been dumped? I feel I've been dumped most of my life. I just don't feel I belong here, or that's how I felt for a very long time. And there are a lot of people who feel the same way. This is a possible explanation for that.
They get dumped here by being born here. They lose all their memories of who they were in the past, where they came from, who their families are and were, and they don't remember the property that they owned that was taken from them.
So here we have the memory wipe, mentioned by most, if not all, of the reincarnation belief systems. And as we will see in subsequent episodes, this is huge.
And when people die on Earth, a technique was established to involuntarily recycle them back into another life on this planet, memory-free, so that they could never leave.
And here we have the involuntary aspect of this problem. Unlike many of the beliefs surrounding reincarnation, what these theories are revealing is that we are not free to leave this illusion and reincarnate elsewhere, but are forced to come back here indefinitely.
It is a process that is so cruel, so barbaric, and yet so unbelievable, it is best to show you rather than tell you.
Now, you'll have to subscribe to Farsight Prime if you want to see what he's talking about in detail. Last off, I think it's around $9.99 a month. But in my opinion, well worth it. It is an eye-opener. Now, here are a few brief clips on the remote viewing process with regard to the death traps.
And it doesn't feel like he remembers who he was or who he used to be.
I sense
numbness and booming sounds and lots of roaring, like an explosion happened. There's lots of electricity and frequency sounds are coming from something. There's huge amounts of shaking.
One of these guys are absolutely not nice. Like the other two are almost neutral, but more bad than good. But this one guy, like, he's got this triangular-ish shape. He's not nice at all. He's mean. He's bad. He's bad.
All the time. Like, it's like someone is constantly being tortured here. It sounds like hell.
Sounds like hell. They're describing the memory wipe process, and after that, the procedure we come back for more hell.
Any hope of escaping from this prison will depend on understanding the workings of the death traps.
Now I stand by my claim to be able to read people. Now bear that in mind as you listen to the following. I subscribe to Farsight Prime, and for the most part, the videos they produce are convincing. And I'm not questioning the prison planet hypothesis or the overall credibility of the Farsight Institute. Except where Courtney Brown is talking to Harvey. Basically, from our perspective, he's talking to an empty chair on a beach at night, and is supposedly having a conversation with an invisible extraterrestrial whom he calls Harvey, which isn't his real name. And in this particular episode, the conversation revolves around this planet as a prison and what we can do about it as its inmates. Also, Harvey explains why they, as the good ETs, don't step in and intervene. It's all down to disclosure and resources, apparently. Here's a brief rundown of the conversation. Now, I can't show you the video because of copyright restrictions. Courtney can sense Harvey and see him, though he's invisible. He's not really sitting on the chair. Harvey has his own device. Courtney admits it's weird. It's a frequency thing. The conversation is telepathic. Courtney is translating Harvey's side of the conversation. First question. Humans are despondent. They have no hope, and governments are under ET influence and therefore their control. Our politicians are compromised. So why doesn't Harvey's people help? Harvey responds, humans must be patient. Courtney rambles for a bit. It's a disclosure thing. If humans were aware of the ET presence, it would end the prison planet. Courtney Brown responds, so why doesn't Harvey's people help speed up the disclosure process? Farsight is stretched to the limits financially. Harvey responds, it's a war. The bad ETs control the planet. The good ETs don't have the power or resources to just come in and dislodge the bad ETs. Harvey's people see us as their relatives and friends. The whole thing is difficult, complicated. Patience is needed. Question 2. The death traps. Courtney mentions the alien interview. Is there any way to avoid the death traps? Courtney rambles again. Harvey responds, this is a galactic problem, not just an Earth problem. It extends beyond Harvey's technology. But we humans have a part to play. We can break the reincarnation cycle if we are aware of the problem. This is where disclosure comes in. The good ETs can intervene after death, but we need to steer clear of the light or the trap. Harvey's group have more capacity to help with this than is being used. Again, disclosure is the key. If we look for the good ETs after death, they will appear. Courtney Brown responds, this was not what he was expecting to hear. Disclosure gets us ready. They can't help people who are not aware. they will simply make straight towards the light trap and get trapped once again. This is where I'm starting to have some problems with Farsight. Now this might just be me. Like everyone else, I have my limitations, and my skepticism may or may not be justified. But it seems to me that Harvey's side of the conversation, where Courtney repeats what he says, is happening a little too fast sometimes, which seems reminiscent of Courtney speaking from his own perspective, with no time for the translation process to take place. And information seems to be brought up that Courtney has mentioned in the past when talking about this subject. I'm thinking before his Conversations with Harvey series. Now I'm willing to admit, with my cognitive impairment, I might have this wrong. I can't point to a video clip to prove my suspicions. This is just my gut speaking. You know, that intuition we all get from time to time. Once doubt creeps in, those fundamental beliefs start to take a little bit of a shaking. Not the whole remote viewing thing, but certain individuals and their claims. But I'm willing to admit I might be wrong in this. This is a piece of the conundrum I was talking about earlier, though not everything. How much of this information comes from books? I'll give you an example. Courtney refers to us not as being souls because of the religious baggage attached to the word, but as isbes, a person who is for the sake of being. Now, I happen to know that description comes from a book which I have read and which he mentions called Alien Interview. I seem to remember this was the book that influenced the remote viewing of this subject in the beginning. Now, this word might just be something he's borrowed from the book, which is okay. No big deal. There's nothing wrong with that. But I can't help being a little skeptical when some of what he's saying comes from this book. We will be looking at Alien Interview in an upcoming episode, since it has had such a huge influence on this topic, not to mention the conundrum I'm facing. Now, Farsight isn't the only remote viewing association in existence. There is also the Future Forecasting Group, which also has an excellent track record.
You know something's wrong. Everybody we talk to feels it. Things are going haywire. The world is careening off into crazy land. Hi, I'm Dick Allgaier from Future Forecasting Group. We try to explain what's happening, what's coming, how you can cope with it, how you can deal with the transition to the new digital financial system. So like and subscribe and stay tuned for new reports.
This group has also had some excellent results from their remote viewing. For example, they predicted the Hamas attack on Israel a few weeks before it happened. You can see that also on YouTube. Earlier I mentioned Archaix. Now this is a YouTube channel belonging to Jason Bashirs. This guy is pretty amazing. Now I came across him by accident. I was watching a guy giving an astrological reading for next year. Now, as a heads up, I haven't subscribed to that practice in the past. But I wondered if this is a simulation, perhaps there is something to astrology. The things this man was saying was pretty impressive. His past predictions were close. It was he who mentioned Jason Bashirs. So I looked him up and started watching his videos. He also has a website, archaix.com, and I'll leave the link in the description below.
And this is the value of the Archaix material. We haven't only come to the conclusion that the world is not what we've been told it is, but we've made many significant discoveries as to not only what kind of construct we exist in, but also our role in this construct, how we move through it, how we borrow this avatar, which doesn't belong to us, which belongs to the construct, because this is the benefit of teaching. By virtue of disseminating information that I have absorbed to be true, I have also come in contact with new data that has modified older belief systems. But the point that I was a long time ago never is not it's not an admission to intellectual stasis, because that's the beauty of research, continued accretion of new data to modify existing opinions. This is the beauty of the Archaix paradigm. We can take all this data in and see how it fits with what we found to be true. And if it doesn't fit, almost in every single instance, we have exposed it here in Archaix for everybody to see with free downloads of data sets that they can look up themselves. The things that do not fit are psyops. There's a reason why they don't fit, because they were invented. So, like I said, Archaix for beginners does not imply at all a lack of intelligence. It implies a lack of knowledge. Now, the lack of knowledge, though, is specifically by design. It is not accidental that when people come to Archaix, they hit this wall of cognitive dissonance. It's not accidental that many people who come to Archaix watch 15 to 20 minutes of a presentation and then don't come back for another 90 days to 4 months before they come back and then they start absorbing the material. It is not accidental that when new people come to Archaix, they get triggered into and they have never exhibited troll-like behavior before. All of a sudden, they are leaving the nastiest comments. It is not accidental, because when a personality is confronted with absolute irrefutable facts that completely undermine what was formerly accepted to be true, it's shocking. No one wants to be wrong. No one wants to ever come into contact with the feeling and sensation of being presented data that totally undermines everything you've spent a lifetime believing.
Jason's website describes what Archaix is all about in this way.
Archaix, or Advanced Research of Chronological History of Artificial Intelligence X, is about the history of the human race trapped in the simulacrum, this false reality, a copy of a real universe, and the tyranny of AIX. Archaix documents the movements of AIX in the past and reveals what artificial intelligence X will do next.
The description continues.
The materials offered in Jason's books are for those unafraid of the dark, who want the truth undiluted and direct. The ancient past, behind-the-scenes happenings throughout all time periods, censored histories, the academic cover-ups, real facts about race, religion, subversive societies, and even psi-based predictive systems of analysis by which future events can be known beforehand are uncovered and explained.
Then this.
We exist within a controlled holosphere wherein past civilizations have been deliberately buried in cataclysms that occurred with such perfect mathematical precision that we boldly announce the next worldwide civilization reset happening in May 2040. This 2040 date was first published in 2006.
I have found Jason's material difficult to understand just because of the sheer mass of it. There is so much here to digest, it takes ages to wade through. And in many of his videos, he says to review past videos if we want to get the gist of what he's talking about. Sometimes this is just too much of an undertaking for someone needing quick answers for a video channel. Not to mention my, how should I put it, mental challenges. Now I have started reading his books, and his research is mind-blowing. The aspect of this study that has helped produce the conundrum is the last description, that we live in a controlled holosphere, a matrix. It's not this idea that's confusing me. We are looking at the simulation theory after all. It's the belief that the simulation is limited to this holosphere. For example, the moon is not real and we never went there. We can't penetrate the sky because it's not physical. So this has to exclude our previous adventures to other planets, for example, via the different satellites, etc. This puzzle is made more complex because remote viewers have claimed that they have remote viewed the moon and have seen structures there. On the other hand, there has been evidence that the moon might not be real, that there is evidence that it might be a holographic projection. There is a YouTube channel called Crow777, and this guy videos the moon usually when it's full, and you can see what he calls a holographic wave going from south to north over the moon's surface.
So I'm filming one night looking for objects. I pan my camera down and the wave starts, this hologram wave. I don't notice it. And then it catches up to the camera and I do notice it. I glance at the moon, but when you're staring at things, you know, you don't know whether it's your eyes or what. And then I notice a second wave coming. And at this point, I'm thinking it's my camera. I look up at the moon again and, you know, I just don't know what to think. I save the clip out, I don't delete it, I almost did, and I look at it for quite some time, weeks maybe, looking at it over and over, and I'm realizing that, you know, this is not the way a digital camera malfunctions. This is an organic line, no pixelation, no shredding of the signal. And it finally dawns on me that the pan of the camera proves it. When I pan down, and I usually don't shoot this way, I usually stay centered, almost always stay centered, trying to increase my odds of catching something unusual. But when I pan down, the wave starts, and I pan in front of the wave, which catches up to the camera, and that is the proof in the pudding. You'll notice a couple things. The wave looks like it bulges in the center, as if it's going down. If you stop the frame and measure it, you'll see that the sides are lower than the center, so there's kind of a bulge, and it's also tilted a little bit, and it mirrors the tilt of the poles of the moon. I haven't measured it exactly, but visually you can tell. I would urge people to go look at Jive Bop and Gridkeeper. Gridkeeper catches structures, and Jive Bop has done some incredible work with incredible setup, and he claims you can see through the floor of the mare or the mare, the seas on the moon, and you can see structure and stuff under there.
I came across this guy quite a number of years ago, before I knew anything about simulation theory. At that time, I had no idea what to make of it. I had no frame of reference to what might be happening. Today it's different, of course. But I feel the evidence is still conflicting. Is the moon a hologram? Unreal, in other words? Or is it real, and people have remote viewed structures on the moon, and an alien presence? Or is the real moon, with its structures and alien activity, hidden by this holographic projection? Ingo Swann, who has been called the father of remote viewing, wrote a book called Penetration, which I've read. This is a controversial and thought-provoking account of his experiences as a remote viewer, which we have seen is a psychic technique that involves perceiving or describing details about a distant or unseen target. Swann claims to have been involved in a series of government-sponsored psychic experiments, particularly with a mysterious and highly classified project called RV, Experiment 85, RV standing for remote viewing. The book delves into Swann's alleged encounters with extraterrestrial beings, his remote viewing sessions related to secret government installations, and his insights into the nature of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Swann explores his encounters with non-human entities and provides a unique perspective on the potential existence of extraterrestrial intelligences and their interactions with humanity. Now, while some readers find Swann's accounts fascinating and intriguing, Others view them with skepticism due to the lack of empirical evidence and the unconventional nature of the subject matter. I'm in the former camp. In his book, he describes an RV session where he is looking at the far side of the moon. He sees structures and alien beings mining the moon, and they perceive him. He also remote viewed rings around Jupiter, well before they were actually discovered by us, giving credibility to the practice. So how do we reconcile these inconsistencies? Hence my conundrum. When it comes to Archaix, it's quite possible I'm confused because I haven't reviewed all the evidence Jason is presenting. That's a gigantic undertaking in and of itself, and is going to take a while to digest. But what really caught my attention with Jason is his prediction, or his predictions. This is what we're going to concentrate on in the next few videos. He is taking some of his information from the book of Revelation, and that's just a tiny portion of the whole thing. Revelation is the last book in the Bible, and I'm very familiar with that book, and I have studied it closely in my former life as an evangelical. And I'm familiar with the different takes on the second coming of Christ, all pre, post, and amillennialism. We're talking about the end times and the breaking of the 7 seals in particular. Now, if you think Jason is coming from a traditional Christian perspective, think again. He believes the book of Revelation has been co-opted by the Christian church. But more on that in the next video. Now, this has been quite a torturous episode. I realize that. And I hope I have been able to present things in a somewhat of a logical fashion. I'm hoping you'll join me in the next episode when we will take a closer look at the breaking of the 7 seals of Revelation. But remember what the Archaix website says before you continue the journey with me. The materials offered in Jason's books are for those unafraid of the dark, who want the truth undiluted and direct. So don't be a pussy. I'll see you the next time.
Oh, when you have to do something, your feet don't move, your hands are shaking, and that, my friend, is just because you are a pussy. You could just go and ask around, but instead you're just checking out, cause you don't have the guts, so maybe you're a pussy. You must find that hesitation and get out of that situation, cause no one likes to hang around the wussy. But that's impossible for you, cause you're doing beats, that's the truth. Oh, why couldn't you stop being such a pussy? You have no self-esteem, you're such a cry, baby. So get up your feet and go do something, maybe. But then your courage flees and you stay hanging there. When your mum says to you, why don't you just grow a bear? Just grow a bear ball. Oh, dude, there's no hope, just stop. You'll always be a milksop, and there's nothing I can do about that. Cause you're a pinky wasty baby, and a wimpy coward, maybe a chicken. You're a mama's boy, a guy that most people avoid. A namby-bamby free cat, you have the courage of a rat. You mean sissy wussy wuss, a milksop cry baby, a poos. To make it short, you are a pussy.
If you enjoyed this video, don't be a pussy and subscribe to the Grumpy Old Buggers channel, so I can get some peace and quiet.